Okay, we should be ready to go.
All right.
All right, good morning, everybody. So thanks for joining us in the WebEx for this morning as we get started. Welcome back to a new week. So today we're really going to go lightly over the beginning pieces of Blackboard. So if you're a heavy Blackboard user and you're like, I'm all set, I know what I need to know, then this probably isn't a great recording to watch or a live video to join. But we are going to go and answer some of those basic questions as more information is coming out about the bumped up timeline for Blackboard and its use in our system. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Does that make sense, Kristen?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. So just so kind of setting the stage a little about the way that our school is. And we know that Blackboard has become kind of an ongoing need and an increasing need. What we are seeing as we are going into more and more virtual, feedback on the virtual learning that we're getting from parents is that the one thing, and from students, is the one thing that we are consistently hearing is that we really need to streamline. People were really okay with, and understood our need to just get things up and running in March when we were like, we got to get this moving and we have to do it in 2 days. But if you think back to even the training we did then, our recommendation at that point was to start moving toward Blackboard. And that is because the more we can get in alignment with each other so that a student's experience and a parent's experience is consistent, that when they come in and they want to know where to get the resources that their children are experiencing, if you're a parent or guardian, or for a student's lens, they've got 8 classes, how do I jump between them? If we can streamline that experience for them, that really is kind of one less barrier that they have to work through. And so that's why we've been really pushing heavy on Blackboard. Initially, we had that fall of 21 timeline for this exact reason. But as we look at the uncertainty of moving forward for next year and what that even means, and truly it's uncertain even what that's going to look like in fall yet. One thing we do know we can control is to start to get all of our resources into alignment again. And so that's why you're seeing this bumped up timeline as far as the mandate for secondary SDW 612 to use a consistent platform to get things into Blackboard. So I'm going to zoom in just a little. I think that make this a little bit easier to read. This is just a really clear timeline. It is taken directly off of the communication that exists out here, putting together. But I just want to walk you through it so you can kind of understand what the needs are here. So starting in the fall of September 20th, all right, September 1st, what you would need to have as you start the beginning of the school year was your courses created using that Blackboard Scheduler. If you don't use the Blackboard Scheduler already, it means you are right now manually enrolling your students into your courses. And that's one of the things we want to clean up. So we're going to get you into Blackboard and you're going to be creating your courses using the Blackboard Scheduler. We have a generic template that we use for the district. You'll see that today. And so you'll have to have that template added. Again, this is a consistent experience for all students. You'll want by September 1st, your students enrolled. Well, that's kind of an automatic. That actually goes with the first bullet point because once your course is created with the scheduler, your kids are auto-enrolled. You don't need to do anything additional. And then the last part of that by September 1st is that your building admin or coaches, and this is really specific to your site, how they want to do this, will need to be enrolled. So for instance, if you're in Horning, we know that, you want your coaches and all admin enrolled. You might be different at South or North or West. So you'd look to your building direction for that, but you want to have them enrolled at that point so they can see that. All right, then getting September 15th. So you've got a couple of weeks, 2 weeks to kind of get up and running. If you're in a school that has a house system, and this is not all of them, but some of our middle schools do, that there would be a single house course where all of the kids would be, all of the teacher courses would be linked into that house course. Again, ease of navigation. If you don't have a house or you're not worried about that, that one doesn't apply to you. The same is true for the electives, right? So if you're in a building where you have a house, those electives would be linked in. Basically, what that would mean is like if you're in house 6A at Horning, my math class, my science class, my literacy class, my social studies class, my Phy Ed class are all in one space, and then I can just click off and click and link into those courses. So that's really what it means. Again, doesn't apply to everybody, but if it does apply to you, that's being outlined. Then, so if you use any outside tools, Google Classroom, Shovi, Seesaw, Gizmos, any of those outside tools no longer are just you're directing kids to that. Those links are brought inside of Blackboard. Again, we're talking about Blackboard as a launching pad. So really your direction every day to the students is go into Blackboard and you'll find the things that you need for class today. Doesn't mean you can't use any of those tools. We have been really clear about that all along. It simply means that those links are inside of your Blackboard course. So anybody who needs to get to them can find them. We're trying to streamline. And then the last thing, and this was probably the biggest of all of the asks that are here, is that you have the ability to add content to your Blackboard course. So if you're brand new to Blackboard, that's the one that I would really say, okay, you have to invest some time over the course of the summer learning a little bit more about how to do that. The others, we can take you through a step-by-step procedure, and Kristen's going to do that today. But that ability to add content and teach from that content daily is really going to be the piece that if you're new to Blackboard, you're going to stretch on. So they want you to be able to do that by September 15th so that you can really start to use that course. Having the course is one part, but actually putting good quality content in there is the important part of that. So the next section is this orange section here. You see here kind of this timeline where you are over the first couple of months, September, October, and the beginning of November, you're really starting to learn how to use Blackboard, some of the tools that are available. So maybe a discussion board, maybe a blog. You know, there are a lot of tools that are in there, announcements, calendars. Those are things that you would learn about and learn how to use. We're really just trying to build teacher proficiency, because just putting the content in there is great, but there's so much more you can do. And so that's one of the things we want you to do over the course of the first couple of months of school next year. Notice it's a timeline, and you see the lighter orange after that. We are still learning about Blackboard as tech integrators. So this is one of those things you'll keep doing over time, is continuing learning. It's not intended that you will have all of the tools up and running by November 1st. That's really not the goal of that. The goal is just that you understand that the first part gets you up and running. The second part, getting better with the tool itself. And that's something we really are going to keep encouraging. The second part, feedback from student on course navigation. So getting a course up and running and getting some content in there is really what you're worried about and focused on in September and the beginning of October. But by November, what we want you to do is start to ask your kids questions like, can you find the things you need? Are the directions clear? This is intended to support a blended learning initiative. Let's go back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is we don't really know what is going to happen come fall. But for students who may not be with us every day, students whose health and immune systems are fragile, they have somebody at home who is unwell, we don't know what it's going to look like. And so putting our resources out there is one part of it. Just continually asking kids, like, can you find the things you need? As teachers, we tend to do that. But what we really want you to do is by November 1st, like, have a serious, reflective, conversation with your students and yourself and say, how can I make this better for the kids and their guardians to find the resources that they need? So that's what that orange section is largely about, is improving your navigation so that kids can find what they need in the course. This section here, use with students. So one of the questions I think everybody's asking is like, when do I need to start using it with kids? We had a couple of sessions last 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, with teachers who talked about use of Blackboard from kindergarten all the way up through high school. We had experience, and all of them said the same things. It's about teaching the routine, and it's about consistency. This is where you go to find your resources. If we can be more consistent, we can start to do that streamlining that we had talked about. So even if you're uncomfortable in early September using Blackboard, we're asking that you start urging your students to use it and teach that routine. As you gain comfort, they're going to start to build routines around that. But it's not something that we just put it out there and then we don't reference it again. And that's what that green is really talking about, is you're going to use that throughout the year. And the last part of this is focus on blended learning. So what blended learning is, if you're not familiar, blended learning is having resources that are available for online or virtual consumption, but also doing the face-to-face instruction. We know that with the uncertainty of next year, we're going to have to be prepared for anything. toward the end of this year, we've actually went to what was called virtual learning, which was we don't see the kids physically, right? Except for on WebEx. We are putting all of our resources online. Next year might be a different animal. And as we start to think about that, we have to be able to put our resources online, but also there might be kids with us physically. That's going to really challenge us. We know that in the first couple of months of school, we're not going to iron this all out and be really perfect at it. The district, Jody Landish, Teaching and Learning, has been really clear that we're not going to be perfect at this. It's going to be a messy year next year, no matter what it looks like. But the idea is we keep learning about it and we learn how to get better at it. So as you improve navigation, that light purple there, it's kind of saying like you're starting to add resources. You're starting to think about how am I doing this? Am I meeting my kids' needs? Then kind of later in the year, January, February, and throughout the rest of the year, you really start to think about what are some of the models we can use in blended, how we start experimenting and trying some different things. Frankly, you're going to be teaching, in a blended manner all year long. This is kind of all light purple, but the idea being that, we want to give you some grace to get your course up and running, then start learning about navigation, and then really getting better at it, just like we did with our virtual learning. We didn't expect everything was going to be perfect on day one. We talked about the grace to fail on some of these things just to try them. And that's really what that blended conversation is about. So that's the timeline that is being laid out in the communications. So I'm just going to take a moment and ask if there are any questions around that before I switch it over and have Kristen share her tutorials piece.
No questions.
Okay. All right. Hang on, I hit the wrong button there. So,
actually, Brian, I do have one question.
yeah, go ahead.
This is non-tech Wendy, just as opposed to tech Wendy. I got to clarify there.
Non-tech Wendy.
Hello. Have the teachers been told this new timeline yet through their principals? Because we're still trying to get, as we've talked about before, some of the people in my department to actually do something with putting shells and putting the common pieces on. And I'm wondering if they've been told that, hey, look, this is now not this drawn out thing, but let's go. It needs to be ready. When we say you need to get working on it, we truly mean you need to get working on it. So do you know if they've been told yet that this is for fall?
We were talking about this a little bit before. I think it's this is a very, very new communication in general. So it will be communicated, if it hasn't been yet, very soon. I know like Horning, for instance, it went out this weekend. Andy, did it go to you guys this week or last week?
We just had a meeting this morning, and just in a real rough sense, Kevin explained that this was going to be the way things are going to be, but there was nothing specific at all. So this is the first that I've heard of it broken down like you just did. So
okay,
where things are right now itself.
And I am taking that directly from the communication that Horning and Bob Lessington had put out to his staff, and something that we've seen just from but it is very new. So Wendy, if people haven't heard it yet, they would very soon be hearing about it, we suspect.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, can I, in case they don't, I'm supposed to be meeting with them, this week. Can I reference this in a meeting already? That it's coming kind of thing, but specifics will come from your admin, but we need you to take it seriously.
Yeah, it is. Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it. I have absolute confidence this is where we're going with it. And that is the rough timeline that we're seeing as far as getting up and running.
Excellent. Thank you.
And if you just so that you have the answer to this in case it comes up, because I know this is, for some people this can be really a stressful move, and others are like, I've been doing this fully, but this really does come out of what the feedback we're getting from the virtual teaching and learning surveys that we're getting from students and from families, and even in the staff survey. One of the things that we saw in the staff survey was that, streamlining resources was something that we saw quite a few comments on, like, how do we get things into one single place? So from all the stakeholders and the feedback we're getting, we need to be in a consistent location with our resources. So I think the one thing we don't know is what will happen in fall. The one thing we do know is we can start to jog things into a timeline with some advance notice. It's not a lot, but it sure is better than 2 days of prep. And here we go, we're going to teach like this. And we really did not want to wait until August and Summer Institute to say, hey, surprise, let's make a decision early and get better at it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one other thing, Brian. So, like over the last couple of years, I've been working harder to get, use Google Classroom. It sounds like that will still, have that as an option, but to basically try to phase that out a little bit more and do more with Blackboard and less with Google Classroom. Is that what your advice would be, or?
Yeah, so let me, I think I'll give you my view, and then if Chris and Wendy, if you have anything additional to add. We've talked forever about Google Classroom being a really good digital workflow tool. So like the things that Google Classroom's good at doing for you, you put a copy of a Google Doc out there, and then the kids are able to have their own copies made. It names them for them. They're turning it into you through Google Classroom. Those things are still perfectly appropriate uses of Google Classroom, and we'd encourage you to do that, whether it was Google Classroom or Apple Schoolwork or whatever. That's fine. That's not a problem. I think the thing that you might see a shift in, depending on how you're building a Google Classroom, would be, let's say you're putting instructional resources in Google Classroom, things that people might, the kids might go and access that are just instructional resources. Those would be the things you would really be shifting into Blackboard. And then you might, inside of Blackboard, be referencing, like, you're going to go into Google Classroom, you're going to look for the assignment called XYZ, and you'll turn that in through Google Classroom. So you're going to see kind of the marriage of both of them. But what you'd really be, right now you're saying to your kids, go to Google Classroom and get the things that you need. The language would be, go into Blackboard and get the resource that you need. And if there happens to be a link to Google Classroom from there, that's great. Does that help?
Yeah. It's just a matter kind of getting into that mindset, because I've been used to just using the comment section and everything like that in Google Classroom. So I'll just need to do more, it sounds like, in Blackboard, and then link it to Google Classroom. So
Andrew, I think I'm sorry to jump in here, but I think it's totally appropriate to continue to use those features of Google Classroom. What we're encouraging is not one or the other, but the marriage or the conjunction of both. So we think it's great that you use Google Classroom and you deliver and collect things from your students in that way. You can give feedback there. You can use the commenting features that are available there. It's just that we don't want to see people using Google Classroom in place of Blackboard, because they really have different purposes. Blackboard really is the place where you house your curriculum and your teaching resources, and Google Classroom really can be the place where kids can go to get the copy of the assignment that they need, get feedback on assignments that you're giving them. So you could continue to use it in that way, just not at the exclusion of Blackboard. So Blackboard should always be the place where you launch everything from. Go to our Blackboard course, and then, like Brian was saying, it can be set up there, say, hey, you're going to access this document in Google Classroom, and that's where you turn it in, no problem, because that's what Google Classroom is really good at. But in terms of using Blackboard, we want to really make sure that everybody's using that for that consistency piece for kids, for parents, and they know 100%, hey, if I need to check in where my kid's at, I log in with my parent credentials into Blackboard, and I can access all 5 of their classes, all 6 of their classes, whatever it is. Same thing for the student. I log in one time, each of my Blackboard classes is there, and I don't have that have to think about, oh, is that in Google Classroom or is that somewhere else? It's all directly streamlined through Blackboard.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Kristen, you want to go ahead and take it on?
Yeah. Okay. So in adding to what Brian kind of had just alluded to, I believe that when the messaging goes out, you're going to have some time built in the next couple of days, I believe the 8th, 9th, and 10th, to have some work time to be able to focus on and build in and start working on some of these pieces. Like Brian said, for some of us, this is going to be a little bit of a big shift, a culture shift. For others of people, you've got things started, and you just have to know what the pieces are to move things into the right places. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a very basic kind of overview of where you can go to get some of these things. I'm going to start with logging in to the scheduler, the BB9 scheduler. The scheduler is where you would go to create your classes for the upcoming year if you have not done that already. If you've already got classes that are in existence that you created using the scheduler, you'll be able just to edit the year on those classes. and to use them again. So you don't have to recreate the classes every year, but you do have to create them the first time. So if you haven't moved into that section, or if you haven't created classes for that content area yet, you will need to use the scheduler to create those. And then from that point, it's just a matter of editing it to reflect the correct year. The other thing that we're going to do is we are going to log in, and I'm going to show you how to go out to the district website and to get that blank course template, because again, the goal is for that transparency and that consistency. So if everybody's classes kind of reflects the same type of look, it's easier for our parents to navigate, especially easier for our students to navigate so that they know where they're going. So I'm going to teach you how to get out there, get that template, and then to bring it into the class. So those are really our 3 areas of focus today, and I'll let Brian and Wendy add anything in if they see a need for it. So we'll just get started there. I am going to share my screen and my window here, and I've got some things already queued up, but Wendy and Brian, if you could just drop links into the chat if you're able to while I'm going through this here.
No problem.
So first place that I'm going to go today is I am going to our school district of Waukesha intranet page. From the intranet page, to get to the scheduler, you do need to click on the 3rd link here, Intranet Campus Production. You will be prompted to log in with your SDW credentials. And once you log in there, you'll notice that mine looks a little bit different than yours because I have a few more options down the side, but you want to scroll down until you find the link on the side here that is called Blackboard Scheduler. So when you get to the Blackboard Scheduler, you're going to go in and you're going to be able to see the creation board here. So Wendy, I do wanted to ask you clarification on this before, and I forgot to. When we come in here, we have the option to now create current 2020 or future 2021. I just want to make sure that I'm having them create in the correct place, because I know that their future classes aren't going to show up until their current classes are out for the year. Is that correct?
They can now create in future track as long as their school has been scheduled. And my understanding is for sure all the high schools are scheduled. So they would see their sections for next year and could begin with future track.
All right, so I just wanted to clarify that before I took you through the process. So when you're coming in here, you do want to select that future track, just so you are creating for the upcoming school year versus this past year. So the next step there is when you toggle to that future portion, you're going to want to go into add a Blackboard class. And then you're going to go ahead and choose your school calendar. Again, I have more options here because I have the district, but you will probably just have the school that you're assigned to. I'm going to choose West High School because that's the high school that I service. And then I'm going to just choose a demo teacher here just because we have an understanding that it's okay that I come in here and use her as a kind of guinea pig when I'm creating things. So Katie usually lets me roll with that. So once I select the teacher name, now I have all of the courses that Katie is going to be creating. I would simply go in here and select the course, and then what I'm going to do is if I teach multiple sections of that, I want to make sure that they are all checked, because you're going to want to create one Blackboard class where you update once versus a different class for every single section, because if you did it that way, then you'd have to be updating multiple places, whereas if you put them all into one class, you only have to update your content and your resources one time, and the students are all enrolled into that one class. When I've selected all of my options here, I just go and I say add the Blackboard class, and so then you get a message that says if your class was updated successfully, and it'll be added to your list. We do have a hold period on the time when your classes show up. So if you're planning to start work in Blackboard, you want to make sure that you come in and you do this step at least the day before, because otherwise your classes aren't going to show up in your Blackboard portal. So you do want to make sure that you go ahead and you come in earlier ahead of time before you plan to dig in and start working, because if you don't do that, then your classes will not show up. I'm going to minimize this section here. And then I'm going to show you if you are a person who has already created those classes, where you would go to edit them. So right now we are in the create a Blackboard class, and I'm just going to toggle here 1 second So you can see that all condensed, right? So right now we were in the Add a Blackboard class. If you've already created those classes using the scheduler last year, and you know I'm going to be teaching these classes again, so it's a matter of coming in and modifying it versus creating it from scratch. So I'm going to go to show, and it's going to show the classes that I have available here. To edit the class that I have, I just click on the edit button. Okay. And then I can come in here and I can adapt the name of my class. So if I wanted to change the year, I'm not actually going to do that because I'm actually just a co-teacher in some of these courses and I don't want to mess anything up for anyone. But you have the ability to go ahead and to edit the name of your class here. So if you are typically, you usually name it 1920, 2021, you would do that right here. And then you also have the ability right here where it says the SIS courses, you can come in and you can edit the courses that you have here. And this is where you would come to add in your new students for the year. You also have the ability right here to add in teachers and co-teachers. So that's where you can do that. Brian, Wendy, anything you wanted to add here on this page?
I'm going to hop in really quick there and just let them know that that's also under the SIS courses where you could add another teacher. So if you're co-teaching and you want Mrs. Smith's sections of this same course to be added in, you could actually merge them here. So while I can only choose my name and sections, this is where I would come and say, okay, I need the other sections of AP Prep English 9 because we're going to all be in one class. So they can do that here as well.
And I think I'd add too, if I'm somebody who's already used a Blackboard scheduler before, this is probably something, I mean, you could do it earlier, but this is probably something I'd wait until mid-August to do so that you kind of get rid of some of the old courses that are out there and you're just seeing the new courses moving forward. Otherwise, you might end up with a little bit of a tangled mess. So if you're already a Blackboard scheduler user, you really don't need to touch this until you get back in mid-August, end of August, and then it really runs overnight. It's not a big deal to do it, but that way you'd eliminate that challenge for yourself.
Right. And adding to what Brian said, if you've already done this process, you probably have some sort of course built too, and you would just be taking that and editing it. So you've got the course that you can continue to work on and edit and make improvements to. This portion here where we're editing is really just about changing your name, adapting your name, and adding in the right students. So just because we would recommend holding off on this until a little bit later in the summer doesn't mean that you don't have access to your class and that you can't be working in there.
And the other reason that a teacher would use this modify section is when you go in to create the first time, you're choosing a section. So you will get like your A section. You won't get the second semester. So you would come in here to add your second semester and choose the B of that particular class. We've had a few where teachers said, like, this student started in January and I can't find him anywhere in my class. And that's because the B section wasn't added if they were just a one semester add. So make sure that you do come back to the modify and add any B sections if you're at the high school level.
All right. Okay. So to keep moving along here, this is the BB9 scheduler. And if you have never used it before, this is where you would come to create your classes. There is that hold period, 24 hours overnight. So you do want to do that ahead of time if you want to get started building. The second portion that I'm going to show you here is how to access our generic SDW course template. So I'm taking you out right here just to our regular class or district website. From here, if you just click on the staff tab, you're going to be able to see that now up on the top here, I had a sign in button that I didn't have before. So let me just show you that one more time. I'm just going to click on the W. That's going to bring me to the home page. Right now, as a general user, I do not see that staff sign in piece, right? In order to do that, I can just click on the staff tab. And when I click on that staff tab, now I have the sign-in piece. To access these course templates, you are going to need to log in and verify that you have credentials to access any of those pieces because they have curriculum in them. So I'm going to go ahead and click sign in. This is just regular username and password. So you can come in here, enter in your credentials, and once you are verified, you should be able to access the resources. So now it doesn't look much different, but now when I go back to that staff tab where I have a BB9 button to press, I also have a BB9 resources button to press, and that's where I'm going to go. And here is where you will be able to find that generic shell, but also in the future, there will be courses that have been built out, and you would also be able to come and to get any one of these courses. This is all under work, so you're not seeing any of these areas linked here, but the goal is long-term to be able to have some of that material here. So right now, you can kind of see the classes and the mapping for what's being built out. But for your purposes here today, the one thing that we know for sure is 100% ready to go is that generic secondary Blackboard course template. Right now, I'm going to take you through the steps of. Yep.
Okay, sorry. Non-tech Wendy again. Okay, so I need to be making shells for every secondary course in the PE health department. Okay. So some of this, I mean, I'm doing that through the generic shell, but if these aren't done by the time, like I'm looking, like you said, how they're not all linked up quite yet. If they're not done and linked up, are people just creating their own? Or I've already had some teachers ask about, oh, I've got my own one already. And I know we want to get everybody to a shell and then they personalize it from there with their stuff. But as far as starting in September, are all of these things down here going to be linked and ready to go? Or are people going to be sort of running their own until the shells get done?
Okay, so I'm going to answer this question the best way that I can with the information that I have. So as of right now, we are really encouraging people, do not wait to get started building until you see something appear here. This is a work in process. It's a work in progress, and the timeline for completion is not fall of 2020. So if I were you and I were making a recommendation to the teachers that I serve, I would have them get started. If they've already got something built, but it doesn't match the generic template here, they can download this template and bring it into the course that they already have, and then they can move things around to fit the template. If they do not have anything, they're not currently using a Blackboard class, then they would just want to get started with this generic shell. In the future, when things become available, when those kind of courses become available, they can always come and grab it and bring it into their new class. But I would not wait. I would not encourage anyone to wait for those shells because the timeline has shifted significantly and the work has shifted around those. And so they are not going to be published for fall of 2020. But that doesn't mean we can't get started with where we're at and to start building. And you can build collaboratively if your FIAD people are working together. They could be building in one class and both teachers using it and enrolling that class by exporting it into their own. But that would be my suggestion. No, these are not going to be ready for fall. Do not wait for them to be ready for fall. If you've got a course already created, you want to come in and make sure that you either bring this export in, or if you've already got a course, you may have the ability to build those features into your navigation, and that's 100% okay too, as long as that navigation does match the criteria that's there. If you're starting from scratch, the recommendation is that you come here, you get that generic course template, you drop it into your class, and you start building with that template in mind. Brian, Wendy, did I make that clear, crystal clear?
Wendy, I guess part of what I would say is because you're in a little bit of a different situation where you are the coordinator of that group, if you knew for sure that you were going to have shells prepped and ready for all of those classes by fall, then I would not have everybody go create their own and then you say, oh, and here's my shell that you really have to use. But you want to make sure that they have the skill building to continue to build in Blackboard and add and do that. So, you don't want 52 FIAD 7s going on out there. And then when you come out with what the approved shell is, have that, but you don't have this and that's different. They need the skill. They need to be able to build and add. If you know that you're not going to have them ready by fall, then I would encourage them to be sure they have something so they have some content ready to roll.
Okay, now that sounds good because realistically, I'm trying to get them to meet and to do the work on the common assessments and clean it up, and because things aren't being done the way it really is on the UBD, try to do the cleaning up process so we can put it together to make the standard template, but that's been like pounding my head against the wall to get response and things. So I'm going to end up doing all the shells probably myself, and maybe there'll be a couple people that will help with some input, but
No, I think you got the right idea though, Wendy. It just you know, you keep moving forward on the work. They are not absolutely tied together. Starting with Blackboard does not mean you have to wait for the shell. So, and when the shells are ready, they import very nicely.
good. That's good to know, because I know people like you got Perpy out at West who's so on top of it. Like she's Blackboard. That's how she's running her health.
She's a
So
rock star.
yeah, exactly. So like I'm not
Those-
concerned about her. You know, she's
No,
gonna.
and I think keep in mind, Wendy, you know, as you're thinking about moving forward, like, and as people are watching this recording, whatever, like the thing that you want to keep in mind is that if you can just keep the skill building moving forward, and that's what I'd encourage them to do right now.
Yeah, that'd be perfect, because right now I just want to make sure everybody's not, you know what I mean, like overwhelmed all of a sudden. I want them just to be able to like, okay, if you've got something, keep working with it, and we'll keep backfilling and getting the core shells ready, because right now everybody, there's just so much going on, and I think it's hard to kind of keep everything rolling together. So okay, that'll be great.
And the more you can have people team up, maybe organizing one unit that you then put into the shell, and somebody else that teaches that same class says, well, I'll do this other unit and give it to you to put into the shell, and you build it piecemeal that way too. That can be really helpful to use the team where it's not one person who has to do the entire course.
Right. Yeah, I think some of the groups are getting like that idea too, where at one building, let's say Butler might have a whatever PE6, and they're going to do one PE6 for the teachers that are on site, instead of every single one having their own thing and just you know what I mean? Like they're going to try to possibly consolidate it into one. I mean, a lot of hurdles need to be gone through yet, but I think the general idea is in some of those cases where they are teaching the same course, to have it as similar as possible. They might have their own with their own specific things, but the generalized.
That's the whole idea of the shell, is to create that common thread that then can be personalized depending on what it is that the teacher needs.
And I think definitely encouraging that working smarter, not harder piece is key. If you've got people that want to team up and you know, knock out different pieces, I think definitely encourage that.
Oh, that'll be great. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Alrighty, coming back here, the way that we would go through this, the steps here, if you want to come in and grab that course shell template. So you would want to click on the course shell template button. You get a package that looks like this. Okay, and very simply here, none of this is really legible. I mean, I think you could probably try to decipher it, but you don't need to. The only thing that you really need to know from this page is you need to know that you have to download this entire zip file here. So I'm going to go up to the corner here and press that download. All right, and it's going to create that package for me. It tells me what it's called, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it is saving in a place where I'll know where to locate it, and also that the format is that zip archive. You want it to stay in that zip file so that you're able to easily import it into your class. So I'm going to go ahead and press save here. It's going to create that package or that zip file for me. And as soon as it does that, I'll take it to the next step here. So what I've got is I've already got a blank course created for myself. So this would be the situation for a teacher who's starting fresh, right? They go to the scheduler, they create their class, and then all of a sudden now they have a class. But when they come into their class, there's nothing in the class. And this is where, if they're starting from scratch, bringing that blank template in is really going to be helpful, because it's going to set up their site navigation for them. So I'm just going to look here to see that this is done. Yep, looks like it's already downloaded. So now that I've got my class and I have nothing in here, now this is the part where I come in and I say, okay, so now I created that export, and I now need to import it into my class so that I know where to start. So very simply, you want to scroll down here, and you're going to go to the control panel, oops, and make sure that that is expanded on, and then otherwise it will look like this, but control panel, and then you scroll down to packages and utilities. Once I select packages and utilities, I have the ability to come in here and to import a package. So again, that's under Control Panel. Just show you one more time, Control Panel, and then I want to scroll to Packages and Utilities. And then the next click would be to import the package and the view log. So I'm going to go ahead and select Import Package and View Logs. I do find that a lot of teachers get stuck at this point here because there doesn't look to be a place where you actually have to click to continue the process, right? We're looking for, where's the button? There isn't a button. It's actually this little highlighted hypertext here, right? So if I didn't scroll over this import package piece, I wouldn't necessarily know that that is actually the button. So I do find that teachers get a little bit hung up there, but that's where you need to go. So you need to go ahead and say import package. And now it's going to say, okay, so where are you looking to import this package from? So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to say browse my computer. And right here, and that's my most recent, but it's also on my desktop, is where I downloaded that shell. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. Notice that it is still in that zipped file format. It needs to be in that format for it to come in and to import in seamlessly. I'm going to go ahead and click open. So it's adding that as my import. One of the other key pieces that you need to remember is that you want to make sure that you select what things you want to bring in. In our case here, we recommend select all. Because you're bringing in that whole package. If you are importing from a class that you built or you created an export from a class that you built previously, you might not select all depending on if you want to bring everything over or not. In this case, when we are just bringing in that template, we want to make sure we select all and bring absolutely everything over because that's going to get you the structure and the navigation that you need to match the district template. So it's got all of my things checked there. The last thing that I need to do is I need to come over here and I do need to press submit. Now, depending on the size of the information or the size of the files that are included in that package, that's going to depend on how long it takes for us to kind of see it roll over. This package is relatively small, so it doesn't take a lot of time for that to kind of take effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and refresh here and we'll see it already worked. And now you can see that before where I had a blank class, I now have all of the key navigation pieces that are the district template. When you do bring that package in, you also get the information that goes along with each one of those things. So this was my class banner from before, so I'll need to change that. That colorful web of loveliness will not come into your class. That's something that I already just was playing with before when I was building this class. But if I go to my welcome page, here's that basic standard information. It gives you a brief description of what each one of these areas is and the information that it should contain. So I'm able to go through and to click through, and in each one of these pieces, it just tells you, hey, here's what you need to add here. So for those of you who are just getting started, great place to get started is to just start filling in some of these things that you know for sure. Oh, I already have that. Oh, a course overview? Sure, I can say what my course is about. I already have that document. A course syllabus? Yep, I have my syllabus here. All I need to do is embed it or link it. So you can kind of come through here. The Infinite Campus really is just a link to the Infinite Campus login, so you do not need to change anything there. But then you have the option here to use whichever Google Calendar or Blackboard calendar you're using. I know a lot of people over at West use a different version of a like a Google Doc created calendar, either a spreadsheet or a Google Doc. And Ryan has said that that's completely fine as long as it's embedded and everything is out at least a week at a glance on those calendars. So if your principal has given you the privilege of adding in a different type of calendar, that can work there. And I've seen people just take their calendars and embed them right here, and it looks just like a Google Calendar or the Blackboard calendar. The real heavy lifting comes in where you start building out your units. And so that units folder is set up here, and this is where you start adding in that content build-in piece. So really all of these pieces here, those are things that you'd probably want to start working on now to have ready for that September 1 launch date. And your units maybe pieces that you are starting off building in. Your first couple of units are going to be there. And as you continue throughout the year next year, you continue to add those things in. When I've talked with staff members over at West, I've suggested, you know what, just kind of work backwards, right? What are the units you teach for the year? For each of those units, what's your essential question and the enduring understanding, and work backwards from there. So once you've got each one of those units laid out in that way, it's easier for them to go back in and then say, okay, so now here's what needs to be added, and here's what I'm dropping in on this file. Here's the information I'm adding in here. So if you get those units kind of laid out and you work backwards from there, I think it really does help in terms of breaking things down into manageable pieces. Essentially, that's kind of the overview of things that I wanted to get you started with today. There is enough here in what we've talked about for you to, get launched. Okay, if you need to go create from the scheduler, I've given you an example of how to do that. If you need to go and get that template, given you an example of how to do that, and just kind of how to bring that into your BB9 class. So just from watching today or engaging with this kind of PD session here today, you have those basic kind of components of what you need to get started and the ability to start adding things to that course. Brian, Wendy, anything you'd like to add in here?
No, let me start again. Okay, let's try this. You will notice on the page that Kristen's on right now with unit folder that it is grayed out. That means it's available for the teacher. It's not available to students. They would not see that at all. So that's really helpful as you start to think about, I can get started with this right now. And as long as I leave it unavailable, my students in my current class aren't going to see it. It's not going to be distracting for them. I'm the only one who can see it and can build in there, so that you really do have some leeway without it being public to everybody at this point while you're constructing.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Wendy said, you'll see on some of them, they have the little box here and it's checked. If it has that box and it's checked, it means it's not viewable right now, correct? Yeah, and then so units right now, you can come in here, and if you want to change it or hide it, you can also do that as well.
So it gives you that flexibility that you don't have to be live with it while you're building.
Yeah, and I think just so that you understand, when we talked earlier about, like Wendy was saying, when those shells are ready, you basically are going through the exact same process in the exact same course. So let's say Kristen is teaching, FIED 6, and she's got this course all started, and then the shell comes live. She goes out to that website, she downloads the shell for FIED 6. In the one that you're in, Blank Class for Demo, she does the same file package import that we did before. And those things now with the content in them. So Wendy's written the course overview, she's written the course syllabus, she's got things in Unit 1. They literally lay right inside of the places on the left-hand side. So it's just does a lot of the work for you. And that's why you don't have to wait to get started. Get started with what you've got. And as long as you don't change that navigation menu on the left-hand side, and that's the key, you'll be okay moving forward. If you do go out there and instead of calling it units, you call it weekly lessons, then when you import, it's going to create a new area called units. So you don't want to mess with that left-hand side, because that's really what's going to lighten the workload when your course shell becomes available.
Yeah, and I think one of the other really great pieces of Blackboard, and this has been a learning process for me, but is the availability to continually edit and tweak it and make it better. So as long as you start with something, we had folks that were talking, guest teachers, not this past week, the week before, talking about how they got started. And one was a brand new teacher, and she got started just like this in our summer institute, and throughout the year, she decided, okay, this is how I got started because I needed something to get me started. But then I thought, oh, you know what, this might work more efficiently for organizing things with students. So she kind of bit pieces off of it, and then she could continue to add and tweak throughout just 1 year in the system using Blackboard. There were other folks who spoke about getting started one way, and it's been like a year to 2 years of transitioning and tweaking things to make it the way that you want. So just getting started doesn't mean that's the way that it always has to stay and look. It's very conducive to coming back in and editing and tweaking to make it really be functional for what you want your students to be able to access and what you want them to do once they access what's available to them.
So, Andy, Wendy, any questions from you guys that we can answer yet today?
No, speaking for me, this is going to be so much easier. I did it manually, when I had that, 2-day crash course or whatever. So this is going to be great. Thank you very much for clarifying all that. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Good. Easier is better.
Keep sending your colleagues to the recording.
Yeah.
I agree with like just going through this and thanking you guys, because I think that's going to be a big piece where especially that last thing you said about not changing the side navigation, like that's what we want is the common view for people. Like, so the parents are used to seeing the same kind of basic setup. So rather tweak your material to fit in those categories than making a new category. And then when you do try to upload a potential like course shell that's generalized and completed for everyone, it will make your life much easier because it's not going to be fighting to find a place that there isn't one existing in the shell, if I'm interpreting that correctly.
You got it.
Yay. All right, excellent. Thank you.
Ease of navigation for our families and our students. That consistent look will help them know what it is they need to be looking for.
And Andy, just to kind of your question earlier about Google Classroom. So inside of that units area, that's where you would start putting your links to those kinds of things, right? So you're in the middle of unit 1, day 1, you put some activity or resources out there, and then you might say right in there. And so, to get your copy of this, go out to Google Classroom, and you can even put the link right there for them. So that'll make it even easier for the kids. But that's, as you're thinking about like, how would I put those two together? Hopefully this is starting to give you some structure to see why this really does streamline things for the kids, but you still can use the Google Classroom piece or other, outside resources.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, because I kind of thought that, it was all like, one or the other, and then now it was going to be pretty much all Blackboard. And I'm like, okay, so it's nice to know that there's that we could still kind of, do some, the Google Classroom connection is still be there also.
Yeah, how good it is. Absolutely. We don't want to take the good parts of it away, but we also know that parents going into 15 different Google Classrooms and trying to get in and not having access, and parents like that's not working for people either. So it's finding the balance of both.
I understand. I plan on emailing my colleagues right after this to have them watch the video.
As soon as it's available. It should be today sometime.
All right. Well, do we have anything else today, or are we kind of wrapped up?
Now those were the key points I had for addressing it today. Do we want to let folks know that we may not be going live tomorrow?
Oh yeah. If you're watching the video, tomorrow we will have iPad pickup at West. And we'll have kind of more rolling of those, but you certainly can watch this video at any point in the recording as it becomes live, and we'll put it on our YouTube page.
And we will pick up live again on Wednesday.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm going to end the recording here.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was very, very